Hi, we're the Heart Collective based in Los Angeles, California, streaming through the universe, and I'm Taryn.
I'm Rhoda.
I'm Liz B. We are reframing definitions through heart-centered conversations. So here we are to talk today about discernment. By definition, the ability to judge well. And to judge is to form an opinion about something, right?
Exactly.
So how do we feel about discernment and judging and concluding?
When I think of discernment, for me, it's like, is this for me or is it not for me? It's more of a choice of whether or not it's right for me.
And that's interesting because in the construct of the way our society defines it, as you said, it is a judgment. It is a finite, is it good or is it bad? Is it black? Is it white? But to what you said, I think that beyond something being a universal truth, like we're sitting on the ground, how can someone else judge if something is good for someone or not? And what does that good really mean?
Yeah.
So it is individual. And maybe it's not this strict judgment.
Yes. And it's more of a choice. Like, Shakespeare said, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So it's not so much whether something is universally good or bad, or even right and wrong.
Right.
But does it benefit you or does it harm other people? I think those are the choices that we then make. If it's going to harm you or someone, then maybe it's not right for you.
Right. And
for the collective.
Yeah. And looking at so much information that's coming at us right now, and there's so much of it. And I think it's causing a lot of fear and anxiety in many people. So I think that the reason that we chose discretion right now to kick off our Trinity conversations is because it's such a timely topic. Like, what really feels right for us? Like, does that feel true? Does that feel good? And I think tuning into that inner feeling that we all have is one of the most important abilities that we can carry with us.
Right. And to also stay open. Hi, Bugs. To stay open that everything is changing, right? So maybe what you choose for yourself at the moment may change as time progresses or more things are revealed. And so even though you're creating an idea about something, to be open to that idea being changed, right?
Absolutely.
And so fluctuating that, I feel like because of the pressure on the outside nowadays, it's what makes it a little bit more complicated, because before you felt a little more certain. Right. And now it's kind of like, oh, well, I thought that, maybe not. And,
And I think that's why we want to pigeonhole people or judge them and put them in a special place that's going to be right in our mind, because it means security ultimately. We feel secure thinking that this person is the way that they are. I'm the way that I am. And that feels good because it feels safe. But you're not in the flow and you're not open to anything else.
That's a great point. And it's like, I think it's very important that we each look at that lens by which we view others in the world around us and even ourselves. It's what are we filtering those perceptions through? And because then that becomes, if you're not looking at something, we all have a set of experiences and feelings and beliefs and knowledge that we view things with. But if we're viewing them from the perspective and our discernment is coming not from this is good or this is bad or this doesn't feel good or this does feel good, but it's rather a judgment, then it goes back to that societal definition where it's like a judgment rather than a feeling. So
yeah, so how do we use discernment even in that? Are we being judging, or are we actually feeling out what's right? Like, how do you know the difference?
And how do you do that without a bunch of filters and judgments?
Right.
Yes. How do we go about that?
Right. Wouldn't it be partially the stripping of the judgments themselves? Right? So we're creating the judgments, therefore we, as Rhoda was saying, like we're putting ourselves in others in these boxes, right? I'm this, I'm not that, this person this person that. And then all of a sudden you're disconstructing that judgment, and all of a sudden everybody's a little freer, right? And how do we encounter that? And how do we move through the world with giving people the ability to be who they are at every moment?
That's beautiful.
Right. And ourselves too.
And how do we go about that?
How do we go about that? In a parallel to the times that we're living now, we were talking just 3 seconds ago about stripping down, right? Feeling like I don't want to go to the grocery store as much, or I don't want to have to do certain things that we've gotten used to doing. And I think that would be the same thing towards how we perceive the world. How do we strip down, the concepts and the ideas of things? How can we be pleasantly or wrongly surprised at every moment, and just being open to that, because we have that ability to hold on to righteousness, right?
Absolutely. And that may have been at some point in some of our lives a defense mechanism or kept us safe.
Yes.
But living outside that paradigm, it is important. Like, discernment can say, well, I shouldn't walk down that alley alone at night, or maybe I shouldn't drink that. It has a toxic sign on it. But beyond that, I think it really is a feeling that's very individualistic, and removing those filters now more than ever is very important.
Yeah, as we're creating a new earth, it's a co-creation, and so we have to allow for that flow and that input to change our perspectives and change, not acting from a frame of reference from the past, but like completely new, and in that void of judgment, it's a place of possibility.
Totally.
Also being, I think what's coming up to me is being mindful, right? And being heart-centered at every moment, because that's just bringing the attention to the present moment. So then that feeling of this is for me or this is not for me can arise beyond the structures that we have held upon ourselves and other people. So just that bringing the attention back to the present moment. What is being translated to me right now? What am I feeling? What am I really hearing beyond the constructs that I've created, about this person or about this situation, and being open to receive a new at every moment.
That's so important. And also, I think that we've collectively been trained to react, have action, like take action on things. And so, as you mentioned, Liz, to be heart-centered and just sit with how something makes you feel and process and receive, instead of being so action-oriented. Just being right now and really feeling for yourself. One of the things that's come up for me lately is getting out of my head and not being analytical about things that I'm having discernment about. Of course, that has a place. I'm not saying toss that out entirely, but using like your gut brain, it's like your sixth sense, like, and really getting in tune with that and saying, how does this really make me feel outside of what I'm thinking it makes me feel? Like, what is the real visceral reaction? And that for me lately has given me pretty clear intuition about things.
Yeah, I like that the visceral aspect of it, because really it's in your body, that somatic experience, taking it the energy away from our mental analytic brain and bringing it back into the body, and using so many other senses and points of input from our body will allow us to have a full perspective and a full view, rather than just one point, which we usually use or we have been using in the Western world.
I love that. It reminds me of what Ram Dass said one time, and I don't know if he said that or if he quoted somebody saying it, but the mind is the karma, right? And so we get into that loop of the mind, of the ideas, the constructs, the thoughts, and the even the possibilities within our own reference points, right? Like the computer in the mind will go back and go, well, that hasn't existed, therefore it's not possible, right?
Yeah.
And we're not sitting really with what's happening right in front of us, and that feeling of sometimes just looking back and then feeling like we missed out on something because we were not there. Like we were there, but we were not, right? And so how do we use the mind, as you were saying, to discern, should I go in that dark street or not? And that feeling too, because as you both like refer to the gut feeling, it's in the gut.
Yep.
Right? And we've had this, for some reason, it was created this idea that the mind should be the king, right? And if it's scientific, and if it's through the mind, and if it's numbers, and et cetera.
Yep.
And then we've kind of like moved away from like that inner knowing, right? And if we believe that we are the cosmos in expression individually, then we should have all that knowing to face everything that we encounter. And I feel like at this moment in the world, we're so bombarded that sometimes it's hard to be with ourselves and just ourselves.
It's true. And I think this time is giving us all a really good, or most of us, an opportunity to sit with ourselves. And I'm sure it's bringing up different feelings and different emotions for everyone. And that's another way that I feel like discernment can be really important right now, is just, as you mentioned earlier, just sitting with that and letting it process, and then saying, where is this coming from? Like, what is this? What does this mean? How does this make me feel? You know, how does this really sit with me in my life? And I know, at least for myself right now, some things are speeding up and some things are slowing down due to what's going on globally. But I have had it come up many times to sit with emotion right now. And to let things process without intellectualizing it or having to be analytical. We've all been taught that if something can't be empirically proven outside of us, it's wrong. And I think that is on one hand, useful way of thinking if you're in a scientific laboratory, or perhaps if you're in a surgical room. But if you're operating as a human being on this planet, it's very dangerous for us not to believe that we do have the empowerment to really listen to ourselves and fine-tune our bodies to be able to speak to us and say, no, that relationship doesn't feel good, or no, this job doesn't feel good, or the way I'm behaving doesn't feel right. And let that knowledge be as important as something we read in a book or learn in a school or a guru or a teacher tells us.
I really like the practice of leaning in. And recently, my husband had given me a phrase which I have been mulling over, and it's the contempt prior to investigation. And it's that instant feeling that you say when you say no to something right away, like when cognitive dissonance kicks in, which we all have. You know, we're programmed a certain way, and there's certain triggers that happen within us. So when something that is contradictory comes up, and we automatically go into contempt, like, oh, that's just ridiculous or whatever. But to be in a place of entertaining, not to go with it, but just like allowance. It might not be for you, but it's okay that someone else might have that opinion or that perspective, and to allow that. And I think that's key with the whole co-creation as well, as that allowance that other people are going to have very different ideas and very different desires too.
That's so important. And what feels right for them ought to be honored as well. As you said, as long as it's not harmful, as it's not causing direct harm or intentional harm.
Right.
That definitely has a space, and we need to allow that. You know, everything isn't so black and white, right and wrong.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting too, because if we take that concept and then we apply it to what's happening right now, it gets pretty delicate, right? Because people will feel like your decision, let's say to wear a mask as you walk outside, it's interfering with their ability to be healthy, right? And so I think that we live in a community, either very small community of like a closer community. I mean, but we have the global, county community and neighborhood and all that. And people will apply that to a situation like this. And I feel like it's such a delicate balance, right? How much can you do to create a space for another one's belief or insecurities and fears, and how much that becomes too much for you, right? And it's such a delicate moment, and I feel like this conversation is so good because as we're all learning to navigate each other's insecurities and fears on the collective, how do we present ourselves as individuals honoring that, but also not dishonoring our own experiences, right?
That's so important. I feel like what you said, because it's like walking a tightrope, because so much is coming up for so many people right now, and a lot of people are experiencing a lot of hardship, a lot of pain, loneliness, sadness, confusion, fear, and on the other spectrum of the emotions, maybe a lot of people are able to connect with nature, family, or friends that they have, and or just sit with themselves. So it's a wide range of really charged emotions, and how do we? That is a really good question, and I've struggled with that lately. To be honest, how do I keep my sovereignty and allow others who have an opposing viewpoint or experience to coexist? Because I think a lot of us surround ourselves with people and environments that are in balance or balance our feelings or reflect our feelings. It's a mirror. And if we're lucky, we have people who are going to help us grow out of that, right? But a lot of our environments and our relationships reflect who we are and how we already feel. So when we're encountered with something that's so different, or if someone that is close to us is really processing something that's so different, how do we deal with that with discernment for what's good for us and them?
I think that what Rhoda mentioned about entertaining ideas, right, and possibilities, and then going back to being with that moment, right? If somebody is feeling charged, even if it's somebody that we don't know, and if they're having a really hard time, how can we be present with that? Not to deny our own ability to make decisions for ourselves, but to hold the space for another human who is struggling, right? And if we all take care of ourselves enough, then I feel like it's a ripple effect of being able to take care of others in the world with more of that perspective, or just like, wow, this person is having a really hard time right now. I don't have to change how they feel. I don't have to convince them to feel differently, but how can we meet each other, right? In this place where we can actually engage and not hurt and not dominate.
It's what I really love about nonviolent communication, because the baseline is universal truths that we all have. We all want safety, we all want love, we all want to be heard, we all want to be seen. Those are universal needs.
Right.
And if we can come back to that, so if someone's coming at you with anger, that you're not wearing a mask and you're compromising other people's health, that's the viewpoint that they have. You go back to the heart of it, and it's that they're feeling unsafe, and or maybe even disrespected. And to speak heart to heart and have speaking your own truth while allowing for their needs to be voiced, I think helps. But other than that, it is a really tough time in that sense. You know, I've had to cut communication with people just because I was feeling pulled in by their fear state, and I didn't. That's a boundary I wanted to create. But at the same time, you know, we're talking about openness and allowance, and how do we then move forward if we're creating a new community where that allowance is there, but we're not in a state of fear.
Right. It's like allowing someone else to have their experience, but whether or not we want to engage as individuals or as groups in that, your own discretion, right? Discernment is used there. But that is a delicate balance, because it is our responsibility, as you said, to keep ourselves safe, to keep ourselves healthy, to keep ourselves finely attuned to where we can be of benefit to others. But first you have to put your own oxygen mask on.
Exactly.
Oftentimes.
Right.
Wait a minute. Put your oxygen mask on.
More
I
masks.
see the parallels.
That's right.
And I think that the moment that we encounter now is that there's so much reactivity that sometimes it's hard to meet another at the space where there is an exchange, right? A lot of times there is an imposition, right? A force or idea, or because again, they want to feel safe. So if all of a sudden everything that you thought was what it was, you see that may not be, and then that sense of security just kind of falls away. And I think that more and more we need to activate the tenderness and the compassion, because as you said, everyone is going through their own load, right? And it's going to feel different for everybody, but everybody is really like just either they're processing or not, trying to or not, there's stuff just coming through. And the pressure on the outside, I don't know if it has ever been greater.
Agreed.
Right? Haven't necessarily remembered other times that we may have lived, but just the feeling of the load of information that we have, and the capacity to exchange and to be present in different places, not really having to leave your house, and to be involved in everything and to be away from everything is just so paradoxical. So how do we even make sense on different levels, emotionally, psychologically, physically, energetically? I feel like a lot of times we're still trying to catch up and integrate, and then there's another load. And you're like, oh, you know.
Yeah, let me catch up.
Yeah, wait a minute. The train's not stopping.
No. And it may get faster and faster.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and on that note, it's even like when you're talking about like the Schumann resonance and how our Earth is vibrating at like a totally different frequency than ever before in history, so much higher. And so I know some people don't believe that stuff, but like everything's energy. And I know that when I have like a crazy weekend or something like that of migraines or feeling nauseous or whatever, and then I'll see someone's posted the Schumann resonance has been really high, or completely quiet and low. It's telling, everyone's had the same experience in that sense.
I love that remembrance that we are a living organism with the earth, right? We're not separate from it, and we're part of it. And how do we, again, co-create with this resonance and this being part of this organism? We want, ideally, for all the organs to be working at their maximum capacity, optimal, not maximum, but optimal capacity. And so I believe personally that that's going back to, again, how do you take care of yourself? How do you present yourself, right, in this living organism? And what is your choice in being part of this thing? And how do you be to its own heartbeat, right?
Yeah. That reminds me, if you look at a photo of a healthy white cell, they're not bunched up together. They're very whole and separate and strong on their own, and they're just like flowing, and I see that as like the micro version of us, right? When we're strong and standing in our own center of power and in truth and love and heart-centered, and we're interacting and co-creating, that's the healthy cell on Mother Earth. We're not forcing ourselves or latching onto each other or fighting for space.
Right. And that's beautiful. And that analogy, I think it's right. We all are a microcosm in the macrocosm. Like our bodies, everything happening in our body is a microcosm of the universe, and we're all a microcosmic representation of what's going on in the whole. So I think if we all, discernment becomes much more clear when we all take responsibility for our own energies.
Absolutely.
Because that's really at the end of the day what we have responsibility for, and the ability to control. We may not have responsibility or the ability to control exactly what comes at us, but the ability and our reaction, to fine tune our reactions and how we really perceive things and what we allow into our space that will affect us. Having a co-creative experience is one thing, going out into the world, but it's really using, I think, discernment is to say, what am I going to take part in? How am I going to support myself in this time of a lot of things going on to be really at peace and equilibrium, so I can be a solid person going into the world when all these strong currents of emotions are being processed, and be that healthy cell that isn't being parasitic or, as you said, taking up too much space or killing off the other cells around it. It's like be a healthy embodiment of good energy. And I think that's the first step, I think, in navigating this, is cleaning up our own sides of the street.
Beautiful. Yeah. And also allowing to be taken by the currents and having enough, I think, momentum to ride those waves but not get drowned in them, and having also support, right? To be able to say, I need help.
Yeah.
Or I'm not doing so well and I need, some attention or care. That's something that I've been learning the past, 6-8 months more. To just let people know what you need. We oftentimes think that, well, they'll know, and then get resentful if they don't.
Right.
It's like playing a game with somebody they don't know they're playing. They're like, oh, you're losing.
You're horrible. Yeah.
I'm sorry, was I supposed to do something? And so honoring that will clear the space, will do the internal work, and the pressure is on, and sometimes the pressure is gonna get so strong that you are gonna tumble, and that's okay. You are gonna fall, and that's okay. And there are things that we can clean our house as much as we can, right? And then a hurricane will come and just sweep everything up, and you're like, oh, I had no control over that whatsoever. And as you were beautifully saying, how do you then act on what just happened instead of just immediately reacting and having a very animalistic response, right? Since we're giving our brains and the ideas that we could process, and I say brains because I do believe we have more than one brain, like we're talking about the gut feeling. That's a brain that we have that we haven't really put too much attention on. But if we look even scientifically, how much they've been discovering about all that, again, microcosmos of your intestines and gut and all of that, and how much that relates to your brain and how healthy or not it is. And a lot of serotonin, it's produced in the gut, not in the brain. And so, I mean, we can talk for hours, but mainly to say that, as you were saying, to reiterate that we need to take back the responsibilities about how do we decide to engage in the world and what kind of presence we would like to be. In that, I feel like it's one of the best contributions that we can do.
Absolutely. And now more than ever, when there's so much going on out there that, as you said, it's overwhelming, and has it ever been this way, at least that I can remember, or that my parents can remember when I've spoken with them about this, and the answer is no.
Right.
So being a point of stillness and maintaining that equilibrium and being peaceful and open, but still having healthy boundaries.
Right.
And you're right, asking for help when you need it, saying I need time when I need that too, and just being very thoughtful. And I think we're also so bombarded with this food And that really is horrible for that second brain. And taking that into consideration to what you said, there's a lot of scientific research saying that is a main producer of serotonin, and a lot of depression, anxiety. It is directly linked to what we've done to our gut's health. And I think that's an easy way to clear that up too, going back to discernment and saying, okay, I've cleared this out and done the work here where I can feel that now. I can feel if something isn't good. I can feel if that person is looking like they need help or uncomfortable, and I can feel if something's good for me or not. And I think that it's important for each of us to kind of take back that power and say, well, maybe I don't need someone who is, on TV or someone who has 100,000 followers on Instagram to tell me what's right for me. Maybe I just have a feeling about that.
Yeah. And the ability to act, like when we're talking about the gut, that's where the our power chakra is there. It's like the ability to act is there as well. So it's not just taking in the information and seeing if it's right for you, but the ability to act upon it. And the ability to be in that place of strength where you can ask for help.
Right.
Because it takes strength.
Courage.
Courage.
It does. Totally. I love this. It's just those sweet reminders, right? Sometimes it's simpler than what we think. To just, again, come back to like a place of a little bit more neutrality in the midst of so much polarity and so much extremes. To just remember that sometimes simple things that we can do can yield great benefits.
Absolutely. So, and another thing that has come up for me recently too, just because we go out there and there's so much going on and so much that can be emotionally charged, just because there's a feeling, does that justify a behavior? Or does that justify an action? And so I think there are ways for all of us to, as we were discussing earlier, taking a step back and allowing ourselves time to process and get centered before acting on something and before speaking. So I think that there are some great ways that we can share that people can do that have been beneficial for any of us to incorporate that.
I like to touch on something that just came up to me. I like to point out the difference in feeling and intuition, because feelings are normally charged by experiences, right? So if we've had an experience of a sort and then we're encountered with the possibility of that experience repeating itself, we have a feeling, generally speaking, right? We'll feel scared, or we'll, feel excited. Oh, you looked at me, or whatever. And so I think that developing the sophisticated nuance of understanding and differentiating a feeling versus an intuitive signal, because I feel like a lot of times intuition doesn't necessarily have an end result in mind, right? But it guides you to the highest expression of that moment or yourself, of whatever needs to happen. So I think that, again, coming back to like that gut, which we call feeling, but being able to distinguish that, and is this being charged because I'm looking for a certain result, or is this really bringing me to a highest expression of this moment?
So to put it in other words, is it like a feeling is a response to something outside of you, whereas intuition is coming from the depth of you. Like there's nothing that is creating that response. It's like an inner knowing. Is that right? Is that what you're trying to say, or?
Without getting into the rights or wrongs, right? I feel like, just think about moments, we can do this right now, like a moment where you've just had like an intuitive hit. right? That you either walked somewhere, or I had one recently driving in the car. I was like, don't go through the alley. Okay. And then as I'm driving, I passed the alley and I looked, and there was the garbage truck right there. And I was like, oh, I see the garbage truck. I'd be stuck in there, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's just like
Coming out of nowhere.
out of nowhere, right? And so, which can be tricky, because if we are on a charged encounter or interaction, how do we differentiate a feeling versus that, like, guidance, right? And so to me, the easiest way to differentiate that is to feel how charged my response is in relation to what's being presented to me.
Right.
So somebody tells me something and that activates something in me, and I'm feeling really stressed out, and I decide to engage. What is the goal of my engagement in that moment? It's to be right. It's to feel like I'm in control. What is it, right? And a lot of times when there is a goal, to me, that's an emotional response.
So true.
And so to me, that's the easiest way. I'm not saying it's easy to do it in the midst of conflict,
Right.
but the more we practice in times of no conflict, right?
Yes.
When things are calm and you're just having a conversation, just tuning in at every moment, like, what is this stirring up in me, and how am I being in this moment or feeling? To me, feels like the best way to, like, be more in tune with that voice when it does come, and you're able to, oh, interesting, I wouldn't have done that. And even a lot of times it'll guide you in different ways than the emotion would.
Right,
You know?
right. The emotion may be charged with an experience or a judgment, or,
Right.
you know, this person wearing a blue hat is coming at me. I had a horrible experience with someone who's dressed that way. I don't like that person immediately. You know, and it's, so how do we take a step back in this incredibly energetically and emotionally charged time? And it's a very polarized time. How do we take a step back to really have that come through?
I think that a simple way to do it is to physically put your hand on your heart, if you can, and just take a couple of breaths, but really give yourself the time. We've been told that time is money. Time is not money. You can't buy time.
Right.
Okay. So if time was money, there would be a lot of people who are really rich and they would live forever. You can't. So I just want to break that concept down, because a lot of people, I don't have time. I don't have time. You have time. What do you, and how do you decide to work your time? It's what's different, right? And so just take the pause. Literally take a pause for yourself. Be comfortable with the silence in situations, with interactions with others, right? We are, most of the times, uncomfortable with silence. We want to feel silence in, like you're in the car with somebody and then it gets quiet. Oh, yeah, did you see the sky? It's like really, cloudy today. Whatever, right?
Put some music on.
Like, how do we deal with that? I feel like it's a reflection of, like, the expectations that we have societally, the expectations that we have about ourselves, right? Who am I? I'm the person who always makes them feel comfortable, whatever, right? And as you start stripping down those ideas about who you are, who they should be, who they are, then you're left with the present moment.
So true.
Right? And there's so many possibilities in that presence, and just being truly with the presence of somebody who is anew at every moment, like we are anew at every moment. So if we can recognize that in ourselves, hardly we'll be able to recognize that in others, right? Especially the people that we are in close contact with, because we think we know them.
It's so true.
This is my friend who eats like this, does this, talks like that. Boom, boxed.
Yeah.
And then there's an expression of that person trying to come through, but maybe we don't even realize it, because we've already created what expression fits that person, right? So going back to that, how do you take a moment to just pause, close your eyes, like cut out one of your senses, right? The eyes are so distracting. And if you have the ability, if it's not a life-threatening situation, that you
don't
need
do it while you're driving.
Don't do it while you're that you need all of your senses to be able to. We're clearly talking about a situation where your life is not being threatened in any way, but that you have a moment to just pause and close your eyes, and by doing that, you're allowing that other person to do the same.
So
even
true.
if they don't realize, right? but sometimes it's just enough for them to catch their breath or to realize how they're engaging or whatever, right? So everything I feel like we give to ourselves, we're giving to another person. And to me, that's the simplest way, to just pause and take a breath. Let me just see what I'm going to say here. I'm sorry. I need a minute.
And that's beautiful. And what you said about time is the only non-renewable resource. And it is ours. Each of us has our own time and sovereignty over our own time. So taking that moment to just take a heart-centered breath and to not have to react, produce. I think that's a wonderful gift we can give ourselves and others at this time.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like that whole presence is a present.
Yes.
When you're in the presence, everything's so fulfilling. When you're really in that flow, everything is so filled already. There's nothing else that needs to be inserted in there. Really.
And being okay with that.
And
saying that's enough, that's good enough. And that's a wonderful gift that we can all have, and something that's really, as you said, easy to do.
Yeah, and share it with others. Do it and allow others to do it too, right? Just be, I need a minute here.
Yeah.
I'll pay you back.
Yeah, it's a present. Present to you.
Yes. And you had a good quote, Taryn. We don't know the author of the quote. Would you like to read it? I just put her on the spot.
Okay, hold on.
That was a good one.
Delete that. Thank you, Rhoda. We're going to cut here.
That was a good one.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was good.
If you know the author of this quote,
please hit us
send
up.
that to us. No intention here to not give credit.
Okay. So a quote that we can close with for today's session. We all liked one that is unfortunately anonymous. So if anyone knows who this belongs to, please let us know.
Yes.
But life offers you a lot of invitations. Have discernment about which ones you attend to.
Thank you for spending time with us.
We are the Heart
The Heart Collective is an initiative based in Los Angeles, California, and working globally to foster self-actualization and self-peace via earth peace through our nonprofit offerings and workshops.
Inviting you to join us monthly.
For Trinity Talks wherever you find your favorite podcast.